This is a slideshow created for a book talk at the San Francisco Public Library on March 8th, 2026. The audience totally loved the slides, so I'm sharing the slideshow on YouTube. Let's start. This is Suzhou, a canal-woven city near Shanghai. The abundant water sources makes it easy to create gardens there. Suzhou is widely known for having glorious gardens. 9 of them have been collectively inscribed by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization as one World Heritage Site. Let me introduce these 9 classical gardens one by one. This is the Canglang Pavilion Garden, or Canglang Ting in Chinese. It was first built in the 10th century, so it's probably the oldest existing garden in Suzhou. Another garden first built in the 10th century is the mountain villa with embracing beauty, or Huanxiu Shanzhuang in Chinese. Most scholars believe it's the second oldest existing garden in Suzhou. It's called a mountain villa for having tall rockeries that look like hills. Next, let's look at the Netmaster's Garden, or Wang Shiyuan in Chinese. The Netmaster's Garden has the smallest bridge in Suzhou. You can see the tiny arch bridge in the picture. Equally notably, among the multiple courtyards of the Netmaster's Garden, there's one named the Late Spring Court, or 电春怡 in Chinese. The Late Spring Court inspired the design of the Astor Court in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. But the Astor Court is an indoor courtyard within the museum, whereas the Late Spring Court is an outdoor courtyard with many flowers. So the original courtyard in the Netmaster's Garden is definitely prettier. Another inspirational garden in Suzhou is the Lion Grove, or Shizilin in Chinese. The Lion Grove used to belong to the family of world-renowned architect I.M. Pei, whose Chinese name was Bei Yuming. During Mr. Pei's lifetime, he repeatedly told the media that he drew inspiration from the Lion Grove and other classical gardens in Suzhou. The Lion Grove has countless rocks in the shapes of stone lions. Natural rocks and man-made rockeries occupy about half of the Lion Grove, making it a must-see for those who like Chinese-style rockeries. When it comes to must-sees in Suzhou, what's often at the top of the list is the Humble Administrator's Garden, or 拙政园 in Chinese. This is the largest classical garden in Suzhou. You can pretty much spend a whole day there. By contrast, the Garden of Cultivation is much smaller. The Garden of Cultivation is called 一圃 in Chinese. Although it's a small garden, it has the largest 水榭 pavilion in Suzhou. You can see the largest 水榭 pavilion of Suzhou in this picture. Such a waterfront pavilion is called 水榭 in Chinese. Now let's take a look at a lingering garden, or 留园 in Chinese. Lingering Garden has the tallest natural rock in Suzhou. You can see the sky-piercing rock in the picture. Lingering Garden also has many other splendid sights, but we don't have time to go over them right now. Let's move on to the couple's retreat garden, or 偶园 in Chinese. This can be regarded as the most romantic garden in Suzhou because it was a loving couple who designed the garden together. You can read the couple's story in my book if you're interested. Now, last but not least, the retreat and the reflection garden, or 退思园 in Chinese. This is the only one of the 9 classical gardens that's not within the city limits of Suzhou. It's located in a suburban town named Tongli, but it's special enough to be internationally recognized along with classical gardens in Suzhou City. The retreat and the reflection garden is distinguished for having waterfront buildings in very low positions, which make the buildings seem to be floating on the central pond. Speaking of the central pond, please note that a Suzhou-style garden pond never appears as a circle or a square. That would look too artificial. Just as Suzhou-style gardens are all meant to imitate nature, Suzhou-style garden ponds are all designed to look like natural lakes. So they're all irregularly shaped, usually with koi or goldfish in them. Historically speaking, a koi pond has always been indispensable to a Chinese-style garden. There's an interesting reason. The Chinese word for fish, 鱼, sounds exactly the same as the Chinese word for surplus and the Chinese word for joy. So raising koi and goldfish symbolizes having surpluses and happiness in Chinese culture. A koi pond may also remind the Chinese intellectuals of a famous debate in Chinese history. What happened was, a Chinese philosopher named Zhuangzi commented that the fish he saw were happy. But his friend Huizi objected. You're not a fish. How can you know they're happy or not? Zhuangzi replied, You're not me. How can you know whether I know their feelings or not? Wasn't that a clever answer? By now, you may have noticed that Chinese garden designers are really into symbolism. So in the classical gardens of Suzhou, the choices of plants usually have cultural meanings behind them. For example, the Canglang Pavilion Garden has a wide variety of bamboo plants. In Chinese culture, the hollow core of a bamboo stem symbolizes a humble heart that always keeps some empty space for learning more. This is one of the virtues Chinese people see in bamboo plants. 2 more of their virtues are integrity and self-control, because bamboo stems have sections, and the Chinese word for section is 节, which has multiple meanings, including integrity and self-control. In addition, Bamboo is often praised along with the pine and the winter plum in Chinese culture. The three of them are called three best friends during the coldest time of year, or 岁寒三友 in Chinese, which means they are all resilient. See, in the lower right photo are winter plum blossoms, beautifully reflected in the central pond of the garden of cultivation. Winter plum trees always coming to bloom in January in the northern hemisphere, and they can stay in bloom until early March. So if you go to Suzhou in late March, you probably won't see winter plum blossoms there. But you will see camellia flowers there. Camellia trees also coming to bloom in January in the northern hemisphere. In Suzhou, camellia flowers have an extraordinary bloom period from mid-January through early April. So camellia flowers represent long-lasting beauty in the classical gardens of Suzhou. In terms of symbolism, 玉兰 magnolia symbolizes white jade in Chinese culture, and the Chinese people love jade. That makes 玉兰 magnolia a must-have for classical gardens in Suzhou. 玉兰 magnolia trees always coming to bloom in early or mid-February in the northern hemisphere, including Suzhou, where they can stay in bloom until mid-March. In the meantime, March is when apricot blossoms reach peak bloom in Suzhou. During this time of year, a little mist frequently comes with light rain, making apricot blossoms look dreamy. Such spellbinding scenery gets depicted in many classical Chinese poems. So in the Yangtze River Delta, where Suzhou is located, spring is often poetically summarized as apricot blossoms in the misty rain. That makes apricot blossoms one of the most poetic flower species in Chinese culture. Another poetic flower species in Chinese culture is the peach. Since thousands of years ago, peach blossoms have served as a symbol of love and marriage in Chinese culture. The ancient Chinese believed peach wood could fend off evil spirits too. In addition, there are peaches of immortality in Chinese mythology. That's why peach-shaped buns are often served as a dessert at Chinese birthday parties. Equally interesting is a famous fable titled The Tale of Peach Blossom Springs. In the fable, a fisherman rows his boat upstream along the creek through a flower-laden peach forest. Then he discovers Peach Blossom Springs, around which is a secluded village where everyone lives happily. This fictional village has become the ultimate utopia in Chinese literature. Also auspicious are crabapple blossoms. Crabapple blossoms symbolize wealth, status, and prosperity in Chinese culture. That's why crabapple trees have been planted in many classical Chinese gardens. The largest classical garden in Suzhou, namely the humble administrator's garden, even has a courtyard named the Crabapple Spring Quad, where crabapple trees always beautifully bloom from late March to mid-April. This charming courtyard has ground patterns that feature crabapple blossoms. In the classical gardens of Suzhou, it's quite common to see crabapple blossoms arranged with ancient Chinese coins in ground patterns. Such a design is based on the fact that the Chinese word for flowers, 花, also works as a verb that means to spend. So the combination of flowers and coins was invented to express a wish for always having money to spend. In Suzhou, some garden gates are also in the shape of a crabapple flower. See, in the middle photo is a crabapple flower gate. Actually, the most common Chinese garden gates are moon gates. Suzhou has many moon gates too, just like the moon gate in the photo on the left. However, in Suzhou, garden gates have more variety. Let's look at the photo on the right. These are two vase-shaped gates facing toward each other. A vase-shaped gate is called a 平门 in Chinese. The 平 in 平门 is the Chinese word for vase, but it sounds the same as the Chinese word for peace. So, a vase-shaped gate is meant to be a nice wish for everyone walking through the gate to have a peaceful life. There are just so many of such lovely cultural symbols in the classical gardens of Suzhou. So, if and when you visit Suzhou, you cannot rush. You must take it slow. That's why the corridors and the bridges over there are never straight lines. They are winding corridors and arch bridges or zigzag bridges for the visitors to slow down and linger around. Many visitors especially marvel at the zigzag bridge in Lingering Garden when it's covered with gorgeous wisteria flowers. The wisteria flower season is just too brief, though, only from early to mid-April. So for such a stunning scene, you must be in Suzhou during those 2 weeks of the year. Ideally, I would recommend visiting Suzhou between mid-March and mid-April. That's when you'll get to see the most spectacular spring flowers in Suzhou. However, if you're too busy in March and April, if you have to go earlier or later in the calendar year, you will still have a wonderful time there. Because all the classical gardens over there have been brilliantly designed to look amazing all year round. Just as described in this couplet my granddad wrote, 十步景观异趣，40家姓不同。Walking 10 steps will bring the visitor to an intriguingly different view. Rotating 4 seasons can provide the garden with some distinctively seasonal enjoyments. These words poetically explain why these classical gardens are world famous. In my view, they are the most exquisite examples of harmony with nature. I sincerely hope my book about classical gardens in Suzhou can serve as an informative cultural guide for you to truly appreciate their artistic beauty. Thank you.